Today I'm going to try to draw this street in Krakow, Poland. And if you're thinking, hey, wait a second, this looks and sounds familiar, then hey, wait a second, you've been paying attention. The day before yesterday, I also drew a street in Krakow, one with another looming tower in the distance. And just like that one, maybe calling the drawing a street is a little disingenuous of me. Uh, like that other drawing, today I'll be focusing the bulk of my attention on that tower looking nice and pretty. Will I offer the same amount of attention to the rest of the scene? Let's find out together. Just like that other tower and the one before it, I'm starting at the top and working my way down. I've said it enough already, but if someone watching hasn't seen those other videos, I'd first urge them to pause this one and go watch those. But then I'd tell them that I start at the top because the tower is what I'm prioritizing, and I'd hate to start from somewhere else and leave insufficient space for it to fit. You can imagine, had I started with the street, which is admittedly not the priority here, I could lose track of how much space I'm using and push a portion of the tower out of frame. With that, I would like to hone my composition skills to ensure that doesn't happen. That way, even though the street isn't my priority here, I can still confidently include it without worrying about taking up too much space along the way. Right now, I'm mainly focused on things I want to draw most, as well as not getting too bogged down by all the technical components of the composition. But that doesn't mean I should be ignoring it. If anything, that attitude will only stunt my growth and lull me into a false sense of progress, which, hey, I'd love to avoid. Regardless, sometimes I just want to draw a cool tower, and I'm sure you can understand that. Right, so as you can see, this tower, especially compared to the previous two, is much less ornate, which means less detail with which to concern myself. That sounds like a good thing, but actually one of my favorite parts of drawing these towers has been just that. I enjoy the detailed little shapes and angles, and it makes working my way down like solving a puzzle. For this one, I didn't take into account that those tiles made up the bulk of the intrigue, and while I do end up trying something out to make them part of the drawing, it's really not the same. There are a few interesting angles here, but as for the tower itself, there's very little to get lost in. You might also notice that my tower has become slightly more slender in the drawing, and I'm really not sure how to account for that. There's only so much looking up and down I can do, double and triple checking the reference before I have to make some decisions and finally get some marks down. I guess it seemed thinner to me in the moment. At the end of the day, I'm not too bothered by it, but it would be nice to find a better way to measure things like this, to match the proportions a bit better. Had that window that you see there been a bit larger, I might have started with it instead, which would give me something to measure things against. But it's so diminutive, I think it would have thrown me off even more in this case. I need to look into some other ways of accurately measuring space and angles and whatnot. If you have any suggestions on that, let me know in the comments. Also, while you're at it, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. I don't know what more subscribers does exactly. I suppose it's a nice number by which to measure growth, although I'm sure that goes for views as well, and I don't know where that leaves likes in the equation. But for the sake of keeping things simple, first subscribe, please do it now. Then go watch every single video I've made. Like them while you're at it, and please don't forget to comment that suggestion about whatever that thing I was just talking about is, or really anything. In fact, comment your favorite animal. That would actually be hilarious if this video ever blew up for whatever absurd reason and all the comments were just like, panda, tiger shark, chameleon, hummingbird, without any context. Please do that actually. That'd be great. Even if there's only one person who comments, just spam me with cool animals and drawing tits. So stupid. Wow. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, at this point, As mentioned, I've drawn in some of those tiles on the roof of the tower, and I actually quite like this. I have a long way to go with textures like this, but I think I've done a reasonably decent job at suggesting what's there. It's far from perfect, but it gives the impression that the tower roof isn't just flat, and I'm good with that. While I watch this, I see that straight lines, probably like perfect lines, probably would have worked better here since the tiles are more precisely cut than something like brick or stone. They do protrude quite a bit more than brick, so there does need to be more going on the roof versus, say, the wall here. So I think some mysterious mixture of, straight, precise lines mixed with, I don't know, dimensionality would have worked pretty well. In my rendition, the tower looks more like it's made of one of those giant bugles, the like corn snack thing, rather than tile, but I don't know, whatever. You can't prove I didn't do that on purpose. While I'm at it, I'm also adding a small amount of shading here and there, but I'm doing so incorrectly. Not in technique, although that is absolutely true as well, but in location. I'm shading the bottom of the edge of the roof of the tower, and that's just not what this tower looks like. The roof here barely overhangs, but with my shading, I've made it look much more cone-like, and that just comes from using the idea of a tower in my head rather than the tower directly in front of me, which I've spoken about before. I don't know this for sure, but I can imagine this being a problem for artists, like maybe throughout a whole career. I think our brains are just desperate to fill in the gaps for us, and overriding that, at least for me, is super difficult. A tower is something I'd venture to guess most people can draw purely from imagination, even down to the details. Maybe the whole fill in the gap process doesn't happen with less ubiquitous subjects, or maybe it happens with less frequency, but it seems as though things like towers, lighthouses, cars, bicycles, the stuff we see all the time, occupy their own spaces in our minds, or I'll speak for myself in my mind, so that when I go to draw a new one, in this case, tower, with subtle differences, my brain is like desperate to intervene. It's like, I know what this is. Don't worry. I got it. And then I end up exaggerating certain things like this, stupid overhang. That's why I've appreciated the blind sketching exercises so much, which I spoke about previously. I don't do dedicated ones every day. Maybe I should, but I try to implement a little bit of that process into some of my more casual sketches every so often. I couldn't get out of my head for this drawing, and I think it shows. So I really wish I could have let more of the right side of my brain take over. Also, while we're talking about shading, I am pretty pleased with the shading I did of the right side of the building that sits below the tower. I added some texture to imply the tile, and I shaded it in a way that I think maintains that look. It's subtle at best, and I know I don't need to say it, but I have a long way to go. But I think this is a tiny step in the right direction. However, I squander that with what I do directly below. The bottom portion of the same roof, which would technically be closer to me, which would mean the detail and all that would be ever so slightly clearer, if anything. On that part, I carelessly squiggle in the shading and it looks terrible, frankly. And I don't know why I did that. I do think I need to get a better grip on my patience because as these drawings go on, it's like I start to rush. And I think it's because most of my care and attention I allocate to the first half. There are only a dozen solutions to this issue, but I don't really like any of them. So this, along with countless other things that we've mentioned, um, will just be something that matures over time. I have 10,000 drawing related problems all happening at once, and this is just one of them. I'm not really trying to force any one thing. Instead, I'm trying to move everything all together, like in a row, like a mountain, slowly but evenly. That might sound crazy. Maybe it is crazy, but it's kind of working so far. So I'm just going to see where it goes from here. Anyway, at this point, I'm feeling pretty scattered. My attention is all over the place. And like I said, I'm aware that I'm reaching the end. This video is over 10 minutes, which is fine. Most of them are. But I like the flow of the videos at or around that time frame. And when they creep over 14, 15, even 18 minutes, things feel a lot longer. And I'm aware of that as I'm drawing. So I'm looking for things left to include, which I think is a bad practice for me at this point. I either need to exhale and sit with it, letting the video go on for however long it takes me, or I need to prioritize things, understand ahead of time what I'm explicitly going to omit from the drawing. So the bottom portion of that building, the wall on the right, I even included that mirror and sign. That stuff didn't add anything to the drawing. But when I'm in the middle of it like this, I'm just not thinking about any of that. I'm thinking about what needs to be in the drawing, what's remaining in front of me that isn't on the paper. I know I can't get the street. I knew that then. But what's in the scene that could be part of the drawing, that's where my mind goes. And it changes that could to should. I kind of scramble and see small superfluous details and try at the last minute to include them. And I know it's short-sighted. I know before I start and immediately after I'm done, it's just that state that I'm in, that mesmerized state that alters my mindset on the entire picture. And I'm telling you, it's a weird thing to snap out of. All right. Anyway, I've spoken far too much about the negative stuff. So let me throw in some positives before this ends. The tower, I actually like it quite a bit. I think I like all the towers, but that's neither here nor there. The trees, they're incredibly vague, but they're getting better. I could have spent a lot more time on these to make them even better, I think, but I'm generally happy with where I'm taking them. The angles, many of them are wrong in in a pretty weird way, but the general view is fine. The perspective could be more dramatic. I'm sat pretty close to the ground, so these should look less like I'm on their level, but that's not a positive, so I'll stop talking about it. All in all, I don't dislike this one. I'm pleased enough, but this is an opportunity for me to be a bit more critical of myself because while it's not terrible, I think the last one was actually quite a bit better. I know that none of this is a straight line, the whole process, which is something I'd like to talk about more soon, maybe tomorrow. But yeah, for today, I think I'm more critical than encouraging. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to throw your favorite animal in the mix if you feel so inclined. Sorry again, it's so dumb. Anyway, I appreciate you for being here to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.